I'm Dr. Christoph Laucht from the College of Arts and Humanities, particularly the Department of History Classics. I'm a senior lecturer in modern history and I've been teaching at Swansea since September 2013. I teach modern British, European and US history. I'm particularly interested in Cold War history and nuclear history, and also the history of science, technology and medicine and film and history. Definitely, it's always one of my chief aims to do that. It comes natural to me. I mean, my background in the German educational system, for example, in high school and also at German university level, this was part of my education, and so I try to do the same now. I often find it useful to show the relevance of a subject matter, to make this clear to students, and also to relate a historical subject to contemporary issues. This is becoming increasingly actually quite demanding and quite difficult. In my own subject area on the Cold War, for example, most students are born after the end of the Cold War now, and so it's quite difficult to explain what the nuclear threat was, for example, and so I sometimes bring in visual aids into the classroom. I've used, for example, a still from a Hollywood film called Face Off, where the two protagonists, played by Nicolas Cage and John Travolta, are holding guns at each other's head. And then I ask students, so is this a winnable situation? And then I ask students to imagine that these guns are replaced with vast arsenals of nuclear weapons, and then you can really see the penny drop, and then students getting a sense of what it meant to live during the Cold War and to experience the nuclear threat. I also constantly change the format of classes and seminars, because I don't want any kind of routine to be established in my classes. So sometimes at the beginning I might ask students to do some group work, sometimes later on in a class, so that it's not a fixed model of group work first and then independent discussions or so. And I also find it quite useful sometimes to spontaneously react to the atmosphere in the class. Sometimes students are tired, then I might ask them to do some group work earlier on, or I find that some parts of my class are perhaps a bit difficult to understand, so I give students then the opportunity to look at this in more depth in groups or so, and I find that quite useful. Finally, I offer research-led teaching, and I think this is a key to success in stimulating students, because it exposes them to the latest research findings in my area. It also enables me to vary my classes quite a bit. In my special subject last academic year, for example, I introduced some of my latest sources from my own research on the nuclear 1980s, and actually it helped me also to show students how I personally developed research topics. We looked at previously published work by other historians, and then we looked at a new set of primary sources that I discovered, and this really, I think, showed them how you can develop your own original research topic, and blending secondary literature and with primary source materials. Unfortunately, some students don't seem to respond to any form of stimulation, so I guess this is an experience that all of my colleagues and I have made in class, so that's something that we have to accept and still try to engage them, but sometimes it's virtually impossible. In general, I think they do respond to my enthusiasm. I think my passion for history and my enthusiasm really triggers a kind of spark. And I often find that especially students that are normally quiet, we are all different people, but some students that are quieter, I've experienced that quite often in my classes, they actually participate and they become quite excited about the topics that we cover, and they come up with some really original ideas and independent judgments about the source materials or the secondary literature that we read, and I always find that quite rewarding, and it's this kind of feedback tells me that I'm able to convey my enthusiasm to students. Yes, definitely. I mean, I'm a firm believer in the Prussian educational reformer Wilhelm von Humboldt and this idea that the seminar is actually a site where the researcher meets the interested student. And for me, teaching is a large part of my role as an academic. And it's also, I believe it's a mutual experience. So I give something to the students, I introduce the students to my own research and related topics, but at the same time I also get something back from the students. For example, if I introduce new research, new materials that I discovered, I often get quite interesting and original comments from students, and often students pose very important questions that I might have otherwise overlooked. I mean, it's difficult to discern what the best thing about teaching is, but I would say that positive student feedback is most rewarding and gives oneself a great sense of achievement. Again, this can be reactions by students to new class content also that I'm trialing in my seminars, or it can be module evaluation forms as well. To educate young adults to become critically and independently thinking citizens. Also, I think employability is important to think beyond the history degree. So I'm always keen on teaching students skills which are transferable in terms of employability and so on, so that they can become independent workers, but also work as part of a team. So we do group presentations and so on, so that they have to work to deadlines, but they also have to rely on the work of others, of other group members and so on. And I also find it very important that they can communicate ideas both verbally but also in written form. So those are some of the key points that I think I have to get across as a lecturer. I sometimes have a tendency to talk a lot in seminars, especially if they are closely related to my own research interests, and I think maybe in the future I will try not to say too much in my seminars, but let students speak a bit more in those classes.